Beginning a project with harmony is a good way to kickstart your inspiration. This workflow works especially well for slow-moving parts. This example has a simple structure with 4 sections. Phrases in the global part play all the time, unless they are overridden in the parts. Let's listen to the result first. The goal was a cinematic opening for a dystopian adventure on a frozen planet. The arrangement is full of figures and fragments that can be used for further development and variation. You can stretch, transpose, or otherwise transform them, and if used sparingly, they are always useful for subtle underscoring. With a selection of phrases from your own libraries, you can quickly get the engine running on ostinatos and other textures. This saves you hours of tedious writing with each new project. There's a lot of creative potential in just replacing harmony without touching anything else. So in a way, this video is also about harmony last. You can try alternative chord progressions on a finished project, sometimes to great effect. Editing harmony is easy. For example, you may reverse a selection, transpose it, change the key. We have special tutorials for this. I've already done a few edits and come up with 3 alternative progressions. Harmony replacement is a simple drag and drop operation. In an instant, we have a new piece with a completely different mood. There's no limit to the surprises you can get. This rapid progression turns the arrangement into something completely different. It started with a factory-generated progression taken from the example library. Its rules require it to sustain 3 notes between successive chords and include 2 lines, one ascending and one descending. The constant rhythm is boring, so I loosened it up a bit and made some changes to make it less predictable. A chord progression alone isn't very inspiring. Playing it with a texture, however, offers hints of melodic movements that get your imagination going. This is a very simple texture. Several lines start at different chord tones and move up or down from there. Textures help you pull melodies from your imagination more easily. Imagine the story, imagine the pictures, and the melodies will come. You can make yourself a supply of similar textures and collect them in a library. Writing melodies is a rather chaotic process. Pick a background instrument to match multiple voices. I found it virtually impossible to reconstruct every step for this video. We have separate tutorials for phrase editing and harmony that you should watch. For a second round, I wanted to raise everything to add tension. A semitone up is simple and brutal. A modulation that far away seems harsh at first, but in a slow-moving part, it is actually subtle. After all, we are on a bizarre frozen planet, so why not do something bizarre? In the end, going back from G to A major suddenly makes sense. So don't hesitate to throw progressions together. It's always worth a try. The progression wasn't exactly diatonic anyway. The key is just a reference for the melodies. If you look at the palette, there are a lot of chords in the out there category. I could have analyzed this, but it just worked for me. You may have different stylistic preferences, but I like to keep some rough edges. Melodic fragments without a conclusion, tepid polyphony that comes from random encounters. This fragility is a great contrast to the massive sound. Often you start with relatively short phrases that loop over changing harmonies. A recurring motif emerges almost automatically, without you having to do anything. Here, the horns repeat after 12 bars, so the beginning comes back with that massive E-flat minor chord, and the rest unfolds as a nice variation. Happy accidents are fine, but you want more control. A snapshot creates a physical copy in the current container, so you can edit the loops. Don't fall in love with meticulously edited melodies too soon. They will do very different things when you replace the harmony. Fine-tune only after the harmony has settled down. After the theme crystallized, I continued with more brass and strings. For the low strings, the usual bass cymbals didn't work for me. This voice could use more movement to make it more dramatic. The range for the low strings is narrow. It's inevitable that you can't always have both, the desired intervals and the best sound at the same time. Interval cymbals are sometimes better for melodic bass voices than bass cymbals. Remember that any type of cymbal can be used for bass voices. Just make sure you select the lower playing range. Drawing controllers is easy. We have tutorials for editing parameters. It is very tempting to never stop experimenting. When you're in a flow, more and more variations come up all the time. You can always go back, question everything, and turn it on its head without much effort. It's super creative and inspiring. But at some point, you have to call a prototype done and move on to production. You probably want to fine-tune melodies, instrumentation, and voicings in your DAW. You can still revisit individual phrases later on and export them selectively. And everything you created can be reused in your next project.